This is Module 2, Lesson 2, Estimating with Multiplication. Some important information before we start the actual estimation is that we need to know there is a magic word when reading word problems in order to know that we need to estimate. They won't tell you to estimate. There is a magic word, and that magic word is they ask you to find about. If they tell you how many people are sitting in one section of the baseball stadium, and they tell you how many sections are in the baseball stadium, they then might tell you about how many people were at the baseball stadium. That's telling you to estimate. And the other thing that you need to know is the symbol that we use when we're talking about estimating. It's like an equal sign, but it's squiggly. It's like a squiggly equal sign. And the difference between estimating and rounding is the following. If I have these two numbers, if I am estimating, I round each number. And then I multiply. That's estimating. If I'm rounding, then what I would do is I would do the actual multiplication. And then I would round my answer, which would be 2,000. So the difference between rounding is you do that to the answer, but estimating, you do that to each number in the problem. Now we're going to talk about how to estimate. So what we're going to do, we have 456. We're going to round that to the largest place value. The 5 tells me that the 4 should become a 5. And now we're going to round this to the largest place value, which tells me this should be 40. And now I'm going to multiply. I'm going to ignore my zeros. 5 times 4 is 20. And I put my zeros back in. Here's another one. We're going to underline and box the largest place value. The 5 tells me to bump up the 4. And then over here, the 2 tells me to leave the 4 alone. And now I multiply after I ignore my zeros, which is a 20. And I put all my zeros back in when there are 4 of them. Next, again, we round to the largest place value. So we always just underline the largest place value, box the number next to it. So once again, we're going to ignore our zeros and then put all of these zeros back in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's our estimation for those 3 problems. Here's some more numbers to estimate. I'm going to underline and box. Underline and box. Ignore the zeros. Multiply, put the zeros back in. Underline the 1, box the 3. It tells me to leave the 1 alone. Makes 10,000. Underline and box. That 8 tells me to make the 8 and 9. Put the zeros. Now we're going to ignore all my zeros. There are 6 zeros I ignore. 9 times 1 is 9, and then put the 6 zeros back in. Next, underline and box. That makes that a 3,000 because the 1 does nothing to the 3. Underline and box. The 8 pushes that 8 up to a 9. Ignore the 5 zeros. 9 times 3 is 27, and put my 5 zeros back in. Sometimes you'll see it set up. They'll tell you to round the factors to estimate the products. Products tell us that we are multiplying. Factors are the numbers that we multiply. So first we're going to round this first number, which that 9 makes that 5 a 600. And that 2 here makes that 5 a 50. We ignore the zeros. 5 times 6 is 30, and then we put in the 3 zeros that we crossed out. Next, that 1 turns the 1 to nothing, it keeps it as a 1, and that 9 turns that 5 into a 6. We ignore the zeros. We do 6 times 1 is 6. We put all of the zeros back in, and we put in our commas. The last one on this, that 8 turns that 5 to a 6. Everything else is a 0. That 5 turns a 2 into a 3. We ignore the zeros. 6 times 3 is 18, and we put the 4 zeros back in. Next, sometimes they want you to figure out which one would estimate to a certain number. We have this word expressions here. Expressions tell me there's no equal sign. That's why it's an expression and not an equation. And we're looking for this. So in order to do this, we're going to round each of these. So this rounds to 2,000. This rounds to 10. And that 1, 2, 3, 4. We have the 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives me 20,000. It does not give me the 200,000 I need. So now I look at the next one. It rounds to 20,000. This one rounds to 100. We ignore the zeros. We notice there are 6 zeros. 2 times 1 is 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That makes 2 million. It does not make 200,000. Next, this rounds to 2,000. This rounds to 100. We ignore the zeros. 2 times 1 is 2, and we put the 5 zeros back in. We have 200,000. That matches that. So this is a reasonable estimate for this problem. But we're still going to look at the last one. This rounds to 20,000. This rounds to 1,000. We ignore the zeros. Put the 2. We have to put the 7 zeros back in. And it's 20 million. It does not match that. So the only one that matches is the one we circled. And because there's all this work underneath, it shows how we knew. And that is how we estimate with multiplication.